I'm the product design manager in Aer Lingus. We have 4 UI designers and 2 UX designers. And today I'm going to be talking about outcome-focused ideation, which really means getting your entire team, your entire delivery team, be it product or project, so your BA, your QA, your developers, your designers, your research, everyone at the very beginning before you've even estimated anything, everyone's there at the very start to look at what the outcome you want to deliver with this project is. So I'm going to go through a couple of case studies of how we define what this outcome is and how we measure it. Okay, so Aer Lingus was founded in 1936. It was the national airline of Ireland. That was the very first plane it launched. So it shipped that plane, I suppose. That was called the Uller. In 2001, it launched its first website. So the value proposition for Aer Lingus is essentially still the same. We sell flights online, and nothing really has changed. Everything that's offered here, this is actually in many ways is more accessible than the current website because it has all the data on there, and everything that's a link looks like a link, and everything that's a button has an indicator that it's a button. So we've actually gone backwards in how we've do product design. So here's how we look today. So I joined in 2016. So we still have a value proposition where we sell flights online, but we also have an iOS and Android app. Okay, so it's not rendering our font, but so bear with me. That's Helvetica is the default, but I had our new style guide there. So I feel your pain, Tobias. So the 1-minute ticket. So this was the vision statement that the mobile app team came up with. So they were the first product team in Aer Lingus, which is a project-run organization. So this is how the team mastered research to drive bookings. So there are 18 dedicated product team, multiple specialists, designers, developers, QA, and architect. And they all started, and I worked on this with Rory Madden when he was in Aer Lingus, actually. So this is how the team defined its own flow. So you should never really hire a team and then give them your organizational flow, because really you're denying the organization the opportunity of learning from where the good stuff that these guys have learned in previous organizations. So they define their own flow. But the most important part about this is, so at the start here, there's goals, there's ideation, and there's prototyping, but the entire team is here for this. So everyone who works the whole way along, they're there at the very beginning. So before any prototyping has happened, everyone is briefed on what the goal is. So everyone's there at that meeting at the start. And if your QA can't be there, reschedule it, because they have all the scenarios. And if they're not there for ideation, you'll miss a scenario. You'll start prototyping. They'll come in later on and they'll say, well, what about this scenario? And all of a sudden your prototype doesn't work. Okay, so how we measure success. There's 2 ways. The first one, the most important one for me as a user experience manager is we survey 10,000 customers every quarter. We do this with it's called a voice of guest. It's a digital survey. So if you complete a booking, you might be one of the lucky ones who gets asked, how was your experience? Would you give us some feedback? And then you'll basically be taken into this survey. The other one is like Google Analytics, so conversion. Do people book? Don't they book? So this is what that survey looks like. Last quarter, we got 20,000 respondents. So people like Aer Lingus, they're happy to give feedback, and we do value the feedback, and the feedback that people give in this survey becomes actionable insights for us. So the kind of questions that we ask in the survey are, how would you rate the overall flight booking process? So we're a value carrier, which means we're more expensive. We're not a low-cost carrier. So our standard is up here. So Aer Lingus are a premium airline. Our customers pay more and they expect a better experience. So we want them to be answering 8 and above. 5 and below is a fail, and this is something that we have to fix if it's an orange, a 6 or 7. So I have a quiz for you. So A, B, C, D, and E are all different channels where people can book, digital channels. One of these is a product team. The rest are project teams. Who can tell me which of these is the product team? You can't answer, Roy. A. It is A. Of course it's A. But you can tell it's so because they've been together 3 years and they've been continuously innovating. So that's what happens. So something doesn't get forgotten when the project ends. It actually just goes into a backlog, and that improvement eventually makes its way into the product. So that the product team are happy. The customers of the app are happy. So what we get then. So one of the first things that the app team did 3 years ago was they were given the remit of coming up with how to fix the current app, basically, and make it a real conversion machine. So what they did was they this is what it looks like now. And the customer satisfaction rating from that survey is 90%. So like it's way beyond, it's way outperforming like what expectation should be. So because they had the vision for this 1 minute ticket. So from search to pay, I can do it in under a minute. So how did they do this? So back in 2017, this was what the scores were. And then they got to December 2019, the same survey, the scores are like this. So what they did was we all got into a room and we dug out all the survey questions and we analysed them. What do these survey questions mean? What are we asking the customers to answer? Because basically, this is what we're asking the customers to answer is what we're going to be measured on as a team. Because we're a product team, we share the same KPI. Basically, our Christmas bonus is given together. We're all contributing to it. That's an important part of a product team. They have to share the outcome of what you're going to deliver. So we looked at these and we came up with the conclusion. These are all related to speed. So overall flight booking process, overall ease of use. Conclusion, the booking flow is not fast enough. Speed is the #1 driver of customer satisfaction, not conversion. Customers are happiest when when they can do it quickly. But also, we'll get to that conversion later. So the conclusion on this one is compatibility with my device. So it's a native app, but the compatibility with my device is only 68. That's terrible. If you have a native app that isn't 100% compatible, people should be answering that like 100 because it's a native app. And the next one, this is a good one for our designers. So we ask our customers, how did they like the look and feel of the experience? So that's not a metric that's tied to anything except for our stakeholders care about good design because it's a kind of a fuzzy metric. But the real value of that look and feel metric is when your designer prototypes something up and it's got a really snazzy transition and the developer says, that's really complicated, I don't think it's worth building, and the product owner goes, I don't really see any value in that transition. The designer can say, well, hang on, look and feel for this is only 63. I'm trying to inject a bit of personality and really manage this loading screen for this user. There is value in that. It's called look and feel. So there's a metric for that. Okay, so they analyzed all the data and they were able to come up with their own vision statement for what they wanted the app to be. So by having a native booking flow that's fast, accessible, and easy to use, we can raise every booking customer satisfaction score to 80%. So that's what the goal for it was. And then we used Jeff Gothelf's Lean UX hypothesis statement to basically draft this up. So if you've ever read that Lean UX book, it's great. It's like a how-to to do good UX. So we just came up with this. So we believe it takes too long for guests to make a booking and is hurting conversion. A faster booking flow will increase conversion. We'll know this is true when we see this research. A prototype that scores 80% in overall booking satisfaction. So we build the prototype, get the users to come in and test it. After they've done it, we give them the survey that we give digitally, but we just give it to them in person, and they fill it out. And if they fill it out with the scores that we want, we basically kind of mirrored the digital survey that we do. And this will prove this KPI. Voice of guest, time to make booking is 60%. Expected time to make booking is 80%. So like this one pager is a clear brief for the design team, and it's a clear brief of what we think the value is going to be. So you get that statement together. It can be on anything, but it has to live in a voice of guest metric. Otherwise, like you're just doing a vanity project. If it doesn't affect one of these metrics from the survey that we do, we can't really attribute value to it. There's other ways, but this is the one we focus on today. So you got your clear brief, the team's assembled, so Dev, BA, UX, QA, and then you need an ideation room. So this is what it looked like when we took the app and we put it all onto the wall, every booking flow, and the entire team was there to actually analyze it to see how we could speed things up, where we can make any kind of improvements. Like early draft of design principles here, we're on the wall. And like lots of sketching then afterwards, so we have a big list of improvements that we can make. And then how might these look? Like simple things like buttons should look like buttons. So if I press something, it doesn't need a confirmation. I can press it, it changes color and moves to the next screen. So that speeds up a 2-click process by just having a transition and an animation instead. So this is like a summary of what the booking flow used to look like on the left. Here's like a sketch from like multiple iterations from the ideation session. And then here's like what it looked like in a clickable prototype. So the time from going from like what production looks like, ideation to clickable prototype is actually really fast. As long as you make sure everyone's at the ideation session and you get all the questions out early of what's going to stop this project from being a success, because that's when you stop rework later on, is by doing all the iteration at the start. Like Google says, 1,000 no's for every yes. Like it means that in a way of they'll release something for a year and then can it. But actually, you should try and get your 1,000 no's in the ideation session. And if you need a day or two or a couple of hours, really grill it. And people are always in a hurry to get to this stage. Don't be in a hurry to get there, because once you get there, people take a position. I've designed this, I'm going to defend it. And then like people don't want to have a battle, they don't want the politics to work. But there's no politics when you're here. So try and do all that early at the start. Ooh, I'm out of breath. It's just too many slides. I don't even know how. Okay, so like this is like the transparency of pricing. So that's it on the left, 66. So we cleaned it up and we made this much easier to compare fares. So like pricing should be transparent. It's not deliberate that it's not transparent here. It's just the way it was designed. So just by adding a compare fares button and pinning it so that it's always there, that someone can press it. That's probably what increased the score, just so someone could see easily how to compare the fares. And then on booking, so this is about non-native components. So like none of these are native iOS components. So like simply by just changing them to be native looking components, even if they weren't native, made a big difference to how people feel the overall process is. And then instead of having them select a calendar here, so in and out of this page loads, we actually just choose dates, and now the calendar is now the first part of the flow. It's just real simple things to see how we could, so the goal is 1 minute ticket. How can we speed up this conversion flow? That's the vision. So the vision's been articulated, everyone on the team knows what it is. So we're talking about speed to satisfy the customer, because the customer wants a fast experience. Another one we did was we had this 2 screens, one was review and one was purchase, but they both kind of duplicate the same purpose and repeat your flight details. And then we had this warning to complete purchase at the end. So that's why people were waiting on this page, because we make it into a warning. We want them to complete, we want them to pay, we don't want them to be scared of paying. So just pay now, and that sounds final. Pay now. There's no more screens after this. But that's just the cognitive load, so how long it takes someone to understand this page, was just reduced a lot, and they were just able to pay now. Now we just continuously adding things like Apple Pay and like different ways to pay, and summarizing flight cards down from this to this. So just lots of tiny little improvements. But this is why the product team can do this, because they can keep continuously improving over and over and over a couple of years. But it's hard for a project team to do that. So what we learned from this is customer satisfaction with booking flow is 90%, and then app conversion continues to double since 2007. So fixing customer problems increases revenue. So I'm not even looking at revenue or conversion as a metric here. I'm just looking at the customer satisfaction scores, but they're the ones that actually drive revenue. So if you really have a good, like they really invest heavily in customer research in Aer Lingus, and you can see that with the surveys that they do and the people that they hire. So they have customer research embedded in the organization, and like there's no like, what does Catherine? She's a lead researcher. Says shit in, shit out. So if you get shit data in, you're going to get shit outcomes from your product teams. So you have to invest in good research. Okay, so this is the project. So with everything I learned from that product team, trying to implement that with a project team. So it's a huge project. Deliver a responsive website in 6 months with a fixed team. So fixed deliverable team. So like this finished last week, and I just spotted something that I should have fixed but didn't fix. Contacted the developer. He's on another project. So the ship has sailed for fixing that. That'll actually happen for something to do with a boarding pass. I'll show you later on. So it's a big team, but with the same approach, vision statement, by having a mobile site that's accessible to all, fast, convenient and easy to use, we can grow our mobile web channel by 105%. That's obviously optimistic, but the voice of guest scores are orange and red, so there's an opportunity. And here's just examples of why they need to be fixed. Like it's not responsive, it's confusing, it's not a UI anyone's ever seen before. They have to figure out how to use it, so that's cognitive load. So that's taking them time just to understand what they're looking at. And it's the same, so this is obviously complicated anyway, and then this is a non-responsive website, and the features behave natively, so it just automatically zooms you in. So that's the kind of problems that you get with in 2020 when your website is still not responsive, to be honest. So we started with some competitive, for the project team, so we started with the seat map. So they did competitive analysis on who does a good seat map. So the reason we started with the seat map, because we did our kickoff ideation, and the devs said they think the seat map is the most complicated thing. Can we look at that first? We're like, absolutely. So but they haven't given any estimates for anything in the project yet, because we're doing all this team ideation at the very beginning before you estimate. So they'll have some ideation before they've even given any estimates. Otherwise, it's just like there's finger in the air and they're making it up basically. So at least this gives them some grounding. So then this is the ideation then of what a seat map might look like. So these are done by designers, developers, the whole team who's in the room. So the results of that ideation session was we need to get into the code and have a look. So they did a hackathon then the following day for a day. So they've looked at the outcomes, they've done ideation, they've done a hackathon, all before they've given estimates on how complicated they think the project is. Ultimately, what we did for the book and flow, it's not released yet, is we just made it the same as the app, because the app is, we know from the app that it's flying along, so why would we like do anything different? Well, it's different inherently, but we've kind of mirrored the same steps. Okay, ease of adding seats. Yeah, so that's like poor on the left. This is just, so it's not released yet, but what we've done, and our user tests are coming back in and around 80, but we won't know till 3 months after it goes out when we get the customer feedback. Did it work or didn't it? Okay, so that's kind of talking about outcomes. So this is the ideation session. So, like, has anyone ever done a design sprint? Yeah, so you like so my favorite part of a design sprint is this ideation session. Like, I can't fit design sprints into my schedule. Nobody really can. They're not really practical to bring into an agile methodology, but you can bring in an ideation session, and that's really well covered by Jake Knapp in design sprints. So it's basically like, so here's the instructions, pretty much out of his book. So successful time box ideation with the team. Ideation needs a clear problem, a range of specialists, a room to work, markers and paper, stopwatch, silent 10-minute idea sketching. That's the most important part, is the silence, and that nobody comes in with any ideas in advance. Because, again, if someone comes in with an idea or gets to talk, they take a position and other people then are coloured. So you need to come in cold and just give them, here's the problem we want to solve, show some of the research, and then silence 10 minutes, see what the sketches come out with. So these are like just different ones from designers and developers who are in the ideation session. Like the great thing about this is, like, the best idea can come from anyone, and then everyone votes on it, and then you do another iteration on it, everyone iterates on that idea, and eventually you don't even really remember who came up with the idea first. But the main thing is it's collaborative, and everyone's doing it together at the start. It's not design showing UI to dev and devs giving them an estimate how to build it. So this is basically like a winning idea, say it gets voted on with these dot votes, and it gets taken to a bit higher fidelity by one of the designers, but it's still only in pen and paper. And then a UX designer can wireframe it up, giving it a bit more clarity and realism. But really, the only purpose of this is just to test basic patterns and functionality and content. So they want to test, does the content read well, and do people understand the content? Because as soon as you start putting colors and interactions and things and that, you're losing actually the testing of just the content. So we have a UX designer, so she wireframes the different interactions, and then the UX copywriter modifies the copy in this form, and this is how we test the iterations of the copy. So the designer then isn't having to do high fidelity stuff and change it. It's changed here early because it's faster and it's easier and there's less work. And then that gets user tested, and then the feedback from the user test was this wasn't 100%. This could be more obvious for users that that's an add button. So like when we took it to prototype, we took that feedback in. So this is the prototype the designer made, and we just added an add button. So now it's just, that was really the only iteration. And then the content changes a good bit. So that's the prototype that was tested. And then this is the design spec that was handed over to development. And then this is what the developers built. So it's basically the same, because they were involved since the very beginning. So it wasn't like we were handing this over to them. They tested the prototypes with us. We built it with them. We were together as a team from the start. So there's no rebriefing. So we're not having to brief them and go through everything again. They know about it because they've been working on it with us since the start. And this is a project team, not a product team. So you can actually apply, if you apply this outcome-focused ideation at the start with everybody, you can kind of get the outcome while the project is active. But once the project closes, you still fall into the same problems Rory addressed earlier. With how do you get something fixed when the project is over? So this is like that's what it was on the left. This is what it is now when we release it. It tested well, but we won't know till September till we get the customer survey results. And this is my last slide. So what I spotted was, where's it on here? No, I fixed it. There was an error in padding on one of these. It was this one, I think. And then I wanted them just to fix it, and he came back and said, well, I can't, I'm not on that project anymore. So like that'll, whereas that would have been like a 2-second change to a product team, now it's into the world like that now, and it'll never be prioritized because it has no value to do as a piece of work on its own. But those little bits, that's what you get when you have a product team, because they care about the product, because they're dedicated specialists, and they're dedicated because they're permanently assigned to the team, but they're dedicated because they own the product and they like the product that they work on. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. Okay, so how we measure success. So there's 3 ways. There's the voice of guest digital survey, there's booking conversion, but there's also measure success by how happy your team is. So a motivated team. Focused ideation means less rework and team contributing to the vision. So iterate with pen and paper and prototypes to avoid rework, and you'll end up with a happy team. So what I've learned in the last few years at Aer Lingus is a team in tune with research builds better products. Iterate with pen and paper, not with pixels. A team that ideates together stays together. Okay, so that's everything for me. Thanks a lot for listening.